Hello everyone. I wanted to look at inserts and effects sends inside Cubase, what they both do and how they work in the mixer. But before we get to that, let's just have a really quick recap on what we looked at last time. So we used Media Bay, Media Bay there, and we made a piano sound. So I'm not sure what piano sound this is, so we chose a piano. We double clicked on that piano, and then we came out, and it's not there, sorry. Let me just do that again. It's just because I'm using my laptop mouse at the moment. So Media Bay, chose a piano. I'll just choose ballad piano. Double click. Yeah, there we go. Double clicked, and he's made it there. But what we did, we then used chord track. So we took this away. We made a chord track, and then we copied up the chords we made in chord track onto that MIDI track to make the piano roll. But I'm not too worried about that today. What we're going to do is just take that, sorry, motorbike going past, take that ballad piano. We can use that to experiment with our effects. So if I put it just on a loop, turn him up a bit. Okay. There may well be effects in here already, but let's have a look. The easiest way to get your effects, you can use the edit here on the left hand side. So as you go up, it's just here, the little E there. Or I quite like seeing the full mixer though. So F3, if you remember before, we looked in the videos and we went to F3 and we got this up here. So this is our mixer, and we can actually see which one we're going to be looking at using, the ballad piano. And because we used a preset from Loop Browser or Media Bay, it's actually got some effects in there. But I'm going to get rid of those because I want to show you how we can assign these. And also, I'd really like to try and assign a send effect today as well. So I'm not going to spend too long with the different types of effects, but enough so we can give it a good go. So as you can see, down the bottom here in the mixer, it tells us what we've got here. So the guitars were ones we set up in an earlier video. We set up the drums in an earlier video, but we haven't looked at drum programming yet. But here's the one we just went into Media Bay and we've made one there. This is our ballad piano, and actually tells us that. We can rename that if you want, but let's call it that for now. Channel strip, I'm not too worried about that at the moment. We've got some useful tools in there, but let's not worry about that too much at the moment. And same with EQ, but we will look at these things. As we've got an insert up here, let's have a look at these effects. So basic click there. We can choose the effect we want. So we could have a delay, which is similar to an echo. Again, we can discuss this. The little plus signs next to each one, that means we can expand on these. So if I went to a filter effect, it gives you lots of different types of filter effects, or we could look at guitar effects. The guitars are really good, and again, we're going to look at those recording guitars. But let's just say on that piano, let's add an effect. Let's just choose the mono delay. So I'm just going to click down, mono delay, and there you go. It assigns it. After it assigns it, actually makes you the next insert, so you can add another one in. Good thing about the effects in Cubase as well is a lot of the times they'll sync to your project. So here you can choose whether you want it, how you want it to work in the bar. So 1/4 would be a quarter note. Feedback is the amount of time it repeats itself, and then the mix is the amount there. So again, we'll look in much more detail at each effect and how each effect works, but I want to show you what an insert was. Some people, and I've seen loads of people do this, they'll actually use reverbs inside an insert effect, which is it's not necessarily wrong to do, but I prefer to use, and when I see a lot of people working, they use reverb and delay sometimes as well as a send effect. The reason being for this is with a send, you can assign one reverb, so one effects unit, and you can assign it to all of these different channels. So rather than making a reverb, which is quite processor heavy, a reverb, rather than me putting a reverb on every single one of these channels, its own sound module, its own one of the instance of this, I can make one and put it on a send, and then that send can be using the same instance of the sound module on every single one, and I'll show you that in more detail. But you can use a reverb on a direct insert, but the problem with this is you'd have to make sure your mix is relatively low, otherwise you're going to get an extremely wet signal, so an extremely a lot of reverb, so they call it wet reverb. The amount of effects, the more effect you have, the wetter the signal is. Okay, so the ones I like to use on inserts are things like compression, distortions. I'd love to use on inserts. Chorus can be used on either, but I prefer to use it on inserts. But the best thing in Cubase is just when you've got something running. So if I go back to our project, here we go. F3 to bring it back up. Experiment with them. So perhaps let's try a modulation as a chorus. So I could try, and I can bring that. Just have a go at experimenting. Stop that a minute. Okay, it's probably not the best loop to demonstrate these with, but really quickly, let's have a look at sends. So, in order to make an effect channel, what we have to do is go Project, Add Track, and we're going to go to an effects channel. We can make this a stereo effect or a mono, but let's stick with a stereo. So we'll have a stereo reverb, and we're going to call it reverb. And you see here it says no effect. Again, it's exactly the same way of assigning effects in the inserts, but we'll just choose the reverb down here. I'm just going to choose Roomworks, which is the standard reverb in Cubase, and then I'm going to go Add Track. Okay, and here he is. It's actually shown me the actual reverb, the sound module, the instance of the effect. And again, here there's loads of presets, so I could perhaps go for a hall. You've got your pre-delays and stuff. Pre-delay is quite a useful effect if you're using things like vocals and you don't want the effect to kick in straight away, so you want to keep some sort of attack of the signal. You've got your reverb times, and the great thing about reverb and all of the great thing about Cubase and all of the DAWs now is when you change things, you can actually visualize them, which is really fantastic. The only other thing I'd suggest doing if you're using sends, put your mix up to a full, so it's completely wet, that signal. Because the beauty of a send is you can adjust the amount of the effect you want in the mixing window, which is fantastic. It's really good. So I've chosen I've got a whole reverb, I've got a bit of a pre-delay, but I'm not worried about any of these settings. We'll look at all of these, but I've put my mix up. This is the most important thing. I've put my mix up to 100%. Now, if I go F3 to bring up the mixer again, you can see where the sends are on the mixer. This is our reverb channel, so we can actually adjust the amount of reverb here as well if you wanted. But it's these sends we're going to use. So you see here, I just clicked on the send, and you get the drop down. And there we go. There's our reverb. That's the one we made. And if I just switch him on, and again, here you go. Here's the amount of reverb. So that would be completely dry to completely wet. And so you can put that on any one. So it's the same instance of the reverb. So it's going to take up a lot less processor power as well, I think, because you're using those. And you can add different amounts. It's not rare to see producers using a few reverb units for different things like vocals and stuff, but it's still great. So you had vocals, backing vocals. You can use the same reverb unit on the vocals, and it keeps some sort of continuity of the sound as well, because today with digital recording there are so many variables, but of course using something like the same effects unit, the same group channels or the same send effects, you're keeping some sort of continuity between the effects. They've got things that are running in similar, which is, you know, a really handy thing to have. It makes things sound like they should be together a lot more. Okay, so we've looked at really briefly, but we'll look at these in more detail when we look at the individual effects. But we've got your inserts and the sends. And just remember, with the inserts, it's actually working on each individual channel. So whatever you have here, so our drums, if we put an insert, it's actually working within this signal flow of the actual one you're working on. Whereas a send, you can use the same instance of the effect and alter, by switching it on, alter the amount of the wet and dry signal. Okay, good luck.